Agree. Should the Jets stay with Sam Darnold or take the quarterback in the draft?
No, I absolutely do not agree with Mel or with Dan in this situation. And listen, I understand that you're talking about the talent conversation when it comes to Sam Darnold. If you put him in this draft class, he's probably the second most talented quarterback. But one of the things that's understated in this conversation and what the Jets should do at 2 is what the last 3 years have done to Sam Darnold in terms of affecting his overall confidence and his career trajectory. I've literally heard from a quarterback about having the career knocked out of him. David Carr was one of my teammates with the New York Giants when we won Super Bowl 46, and he talked about his experience down there with the Houston Texans. One of the things that I worry about with Sam Darnold is that he's never going to realize this potential that we all saw back in 2018 that vaulted him into the top 5 in that draft class.
All right, so that's obviously the push and the pull. Mel, we touched on that briefly. I'll come back to you on that in a second, but I want to get Diana Rossini into the conversation. What are you hearing about this? Because this really is where the draft begins, and everything that follows will hinge on this decision the Jets make. What are you hearing from them?
Yeah, for now, right now, I've been told the same thing day in and day out, which is they are still evaluating what they want to do at the position. But Mel mentioning that they want to take a tight end with Kyle Pitts there. No tight end has ever been taken at the top of the draft in the first 4 spots ever in a draft. So this would be a really intriguing move made by New York. And here's the thing, I've talked to people around the league about Kyle Pitts, and they say he's just a matchup nightmare for defenses. And you look at the impact that we see in the league with Kelsey, Kittle, Waller even, they've really been able to make the difference for these offenses. And if there's one thing that Chris pointed out very clearly, that's Sam Darnold needs help. And what better way to get some help on this offense than getting a tight end as good as Pitts would be?
All right, so we will leave that there. All these things are to be decided, obviously. Let's move then, and Mel and I talked about it, Diana, to the specter that sort of hovers over all of this, and that is Deshaun Watson, because that could change so many teams' plans based upon what winds up happening. What is the latest on the possibility of him getting traded?
They need to pick up their phone. Houston needs to pick up their phone if a trade needs to get done. This is the problem. I've talked to teams around the league. There is tons of interest in Deshaun Watson, but Houston doesn't want to make the deal. And this has been the story from day one. Nick Caserio is in there right now trying to fix this relationship. We can talk all day about whether or not he can get that done, but the Houston perspective right now is we are keeping Watson here. He's not going anywhere.
So if we start assessing value, Mel, I'll come back to you. And obviously it's been a while since you evaluated Deshaun Watson, but we can all tell he's a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the NFL. So should the Jets at number 2 be willing to give up whatever it might take? Should the Dolphins at 3 be willing to give up whatever it might take? Are you in favor of the huge sale, if you will, of all these draft picks to get Deshaun Watson?
And Carolina would be in that mix too, Granny. I would give up whatever it took to get Deshaun Watson. 25 years of age, great quarterback, one of the top 3 or 4 in the league moving forward. He's going to keep ascending from that. You know what you already have. He's dealt with adversity. Talk about Sam. He's had a bad team around him. They still put up great numbers. Deshaun's done what Superman only could do in Houston.
Right.
So, yes, I would give up whatever draft choices it took to get Deshaun Watson. If I'm the Jets, if I'm Miami, if I'm Carolina, yes, I would send a lot of draft choices in that Texas vicinity to the Houston Texans organization.
Dan, looks to me like you're agreeing.
There's no question about it. I think Deshaun Watson's one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in football, and he's only getting better. And Mel makes a great point that we've seen him succeed in adversity. Imagine Deshaun Watson going to a place that is well run. We think that the Jets have a good general manager and the Dolphins have a good general manager. We know the Dolphins have a good head coach, and we think the Jets are going to. Imagine Deshaun Watson in stability, because he's been excellent in chaos. And that's why, like, at the end of the day, when you get your quarterback, because as much as I love Sam Darnold or I'm intrigued by a Zach Wilson or a Fields or something like that, you know Deshaun Watson is great. You don't think he's going to be good. You're not projecting him to be good. You know he's good. If I'm and I thought Mike T made a great point 2 weeks ago. You pit the Dolphins and the Jets against each other and you go, man, if we don't get him, that team's going to. And that's why, at the end of the day, those teams should be very aggressive. And Houston's got to wake up. Houston's got to pay attention. He's not playing for the Texans again.
Chris Canty, what do you think?
No, I think Dan's absolutely right, especially that last point about the Houston Texans. I think they're the last ones to realize that they're going to be forced to trade Deshaun Watson because he's not going to play for them. And as the offseason progresses, as we get to free agency, as we get to the NFL draft, these other teams that are into Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, they're going to start going away because they're going to formulate their own plans in terms of what they want to do at the position in 2021. Yeah. And if the Texans haven't made up their mind, then they're going to lose leverage in terms of the potential compensation that will be coming back to the organization if they were to deal him. So Houston's on the clock right now.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is I don't think that they ever lose with an asset of that significance. People will still be willing to give up a king's ransom. It's just a question of when. If they're going to do it, you would think they have to do it before the draft. And I think it's worth pointing out or worth remembering, go ahead, Danny, that we're remembering that Deshaun Watson is not a free agent. Like, he has some say in this, but not all the say in this. And that also makes the situation a little different. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, I think the big thing, though, Greeny, is you got 2 teams this year who have 2 first-round picks in this draft. You don't have that next year. Right. And so, like, the clock is ticking. Next year, those 2 teams are perfectly pitted against each other, same division, that both have multiple picks this year. And that's why, like, yes, eventually you could move him in September or August or something like that, but you lose the advantage of both Miami and the Jets having multiple first-round picks in this year's draft. And so there's that urgency to make that move, but there's also that capital that you can steal another first rounder this year in comparison to what a team could give you next year or the year after. They both also have young quarterbacks that you might be able to wiggle them away from, obviously, as well. You know, like, you could get Tua. What happens if Houston and Nick Caserio liked Tua coming out of school or liked Sam Darnold 3 years ago coming out of school? Those are also huge advantages when it comes to those two.
Mel Kiper, let me come back to you then on the #1 overall pick, because Trevor Lawrence has been the first pick in this draft, it feels to me, for 3 years now. Are there any questions about him at all? He's having the non-throwing shoulder surgery. I know Dan a little bit later is going to bring up a couple of little questions or a couple of thoughts that exist on him. But what is the general consensus on him going in? Because I feel like the momentum surrounding Zach Wilson has been remarkable these last few weeks.
Yeah, it always happens, Green, this time of year. Remember Rick Meyer, Drew Bledsoe. Bledsoe was the guy, and then Rick Meyer got some play. You think about Peyton Manning with Ryan Leaf. You think about Andrew Luck with RG3. There's always going to be somebody out there who wants to nitpick and say, well, this guy could be a little better than the guy everybody's saying is the lock, stock, and barrel #1 guy. All I'll say is, Greeny, in 43 years of doing this, John Elway's the highest-rated quarterback I've ever had. Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Trevor Lawrence will be 4th in that list of a gazillion quarterbacks that have been rated. So if he's not great, it'll be a huge, huge shock.
Wow, that is interesting, Dan. And you're that level of high on him as well. I know you have some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think that, Trevor Lawrence is Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, and Matthew Stafford kind of balled up into one. I think that his brain is Peyton Manning-like. You watch him kind of operate the line of scrimmage at Clemson, you go, this dude, both in the run and the pass game, thinks next level. And then with the talent of Andrew Luck and Matthew Stafford, the great thing about Trevor Lawrence is his foundation fundamentally is elite, Greeny. It's elite. Now, the really interesting thing is guys who are built like that have great fundamentals, usually need to, because they don't have great talent. They have to have great fundamentals to overcome the lack of talent. This guy's got #1 talent as well. So we're talking elite fundamentals, which matter, combined with elite talent. He's going to be a rock star. He's going to be an absolute stud. He is not even close. There's no one close to Trevor Lawrence in the draft when it comes to the quarterback position.
And then, Diana, let me wrap it with you here as far as the wheeling and dealing end of all of this. Mel is finally, and Mel, can I tell you, it is so exciting as one who has followed you all these years to see you projecting trades in this for the first time. It adds a new element of fun to the draft.
There we go. Brady, I'm finally a senior draft analyst. So once I became senior, I decided to make some trades.
There we go.
Something happened in 2020 is weird for everyone. It even made Mel a little weird. Soon he's going to be having apple pie instead of pumpkin pie every morning, Mel. But look, I love listening to all the different views and the conversation about all the different quarterbacks. But I feel like if we're going to close this segment out, I just want to close it with